In this presentation we're going to be looking at what you can actually do if you're treated unfairly by business in Hampshire. My name is Claire Bradley and I work for Europe Direct Eastleigh. Now Hampshire's a great county. You've got beauties of the New Forest, you've got big commercial centres like Portsmouth, Southampton, Winchester, Basingstoke. But despite all these advantages, there's far too many instances of consumers in the county being treated unfairly by businesses both large and small. And the aim of this presentation is to inform consumers in Hampshire what they can do if they're treated unfairly by a local trader or business. So under EU and UK law, it's illegal for a trader in Hampshire to treat consumers unfairly. And the background to these rules is the Unfair Commercial Practices Directive, which came out in 2005. It was implemented into UK law by the Consumer Protection from Unfair Trading Regulations 2008. It identified 31 commercial practices that were automatically unfair and could never be justified under any circumstances, and this is known as the blacklist. It's also against the law for traders to mislead consumers or treat them aggressively. And the sanction is a £5,000 fine and up to 2 years imprisonment, and the directors of the company can personally go to prison in this situation. So all of the commercial practices we're going to be looking at in the presentation carry that as a sanction, £5,000 fine and up to 2 years imprisonment. Now you have a general right not to be treated unfairly, but what constitutes an unfair commercial practice? An unfair commercial practice is defined under the rules as one that's either a misleading action or a misleading omission. So that's where either the company has done something to mislead you or has in some way failed to tell you something that you really needed to know in order to make an informed decision. The trader also has to carry out what's called professional diligence, so they have to work to the standard that an ordinary professional person would be expected to work to. And if, as a direct result of them failing to do that, the consumer's in a weaker position economically than they would have been if they'd done the job properly, then they can bring a claim against the trader. Now there are 31 behaviours that are automatically unfair if a business does them, and so if you're a consumer in Hampshire and you're the victim of any of these practices, that business is breaking the law and the directors could go to prison and the company could have to pay a £5,000 fine. So use these rights because they really do put you in a very strong position. Now, as I said, there's a blacklist of 31 behaviours. The first of these is claiming to be a signatory to a code of conduct when in fact the trader isn't actually signed up to this, they just put the logo on their letterhead or whatever. The second one is displaying a trust mark, a quality mark or equivalent without actually having gone through the process of authorisation to get that trust mark. Another automatically unfair practice is claiming that a code of conduct has an endorsement from a public or a private body, which in fact it doesn't have. And also claiming that a trader or product has been approved, endorsed or authorised by a public or private body when in fact it hasn't, or making such a claim without actually complying with the terms of that authorisation. Another illegal commercial practice is making an invitation to purchase products at a specified price without disclosing the existence of any reasonable grounds that the trader might have for believing that he won't be able to offer the goods at that price or will be able to supply the goods at all, and will also not be able to supply these products during the period specified by the consumer or in the quantities asked for by the consumer. Another illegal practice is making an invitation to purchase products at a specified price and then refusing to show the advertised item to consumers, or refusing to take orders for it or deliver it within a reasonable time, or demonstrating a defective sample of it with the intention of promoting a different product. And this is known as bait and switch. So you get baited with one product and then the seller basically discourages you from buying that product and then tries to switch you on to another, usually more expensive product. It's also an offence for a business to falsely state that products will only be available for a very limited time, or it'll only be available on particular terms for a limited period of time, when in fact those timelines aren't actually applying. So if a sale is genuinely for one day, then that's fine, but if the posters all say sale today and then you notice that the sale is actually going on for 2 or 3 days, then in that situation the business is committing a criminal offence, because what they're trying to do is rush consumers into buying, thinking that, oh, if I want to get this good deal, I've got to actually do it today. That's an offence. It's a very common one around Hampshire. You see it all the time, but it can be challenged. Another offence is undertaking to provide after-sales service to consumers in a language which is not an official language of the EEA state where the trader is located, and then making after-sales service only available in a different language. Right? Another illegal commercial practice is stating or otherwise creating the impression that a product can legally be sold when in fact it can't. For example, you're not allowed to sell piranhas straight from the Amazon in Europe. So if a business is trying to imply that actually you can buy these goods, then they're breaking the law. Another example is presenting rights given to a consumer in law as a distinctive feature of the trader's actual offer. A good example of this is if you go and you buy electrical products, traders will sometimes try to sell you insurance, saying something like, well, it's very annoying if products break down within 2 years, why don't you take out this insurance, and then if the product breaks you'll be able to get it replaced or refunded. In fact, under EU law, all electrical goods, if they fail within 2 years, must be replaced or refunded by the trader. So effectively you're being asked to pay for insurance for something that the trader should be doing anyway, and again that's a criminal offence. It's also an offence to use editorial content in the media to promote a product where a trader has paid for the promotion without making it clear in the content or by the images or sounds or anything in the advert that this is actually a commercial advert. It's not a consumer talking. This comes up particularly online, lots of YouTube videos, and sometimes companies will pay vloggers, for example, to promote their product. That's fine, but they've got to make it clear that this is actually an advert. It's not just somebody talking, saying, oh, I like whatever. Okay? Another illegal practice is making a materially inaccurate claim concerning the nature and extent of the risk to the personal security of the consumer or his family when they're looking to buy security products. So it's fine to sell security products, but what you can't do is say to consumers in a particular area, oh, the risk of crime is really high in this area when it's not, as a way of frightening the consumer into buying these products. So you have to be accurate in the information that you're giving on things like crime figures in that particular area. Other practices on the blacklist include promoting a product similar to a product made by a particular manufacturer in such a way as to deliberately mislead the consumer. So they think they're buying a product from a reputable manufacturer and the packaging and all the rest of it is so similar that it's very easy to confuse. And that's almost like passing off, which is also obviously illegal under UK law. Pyramid schemes are illegal. In fact, there was a prosecution early on, and it was one of the first ones under these new regulations for pyramid schemes. Pyramid schemes are illegal, they're a criminal offence. Another offence is claiming that the trade is about to cease business, closing down sale, everything must go. In fact, that's fine if they're actually closing down. If they're not, and they're just using this as a way of tricking consumers, then that's against the law. You're also not allowed to claim that you can somehow influence games of chance. So adverts promoting software that guarantee to win you the lottery every time, again, that's a scam. There's no such way of predicting the lottery, so therefore that would be a criminal offence. You're also not allowed to make health claims about particular products, so either claiming that your product can cure disease or cure illnesses or cure malformations, when in fact you've got no scientific evidence for that whatsoever. So it's okay to make claims like that, provided you can back them up, but what you can't do is make sweeping statements about this product cures everything, when in fact there's no evidence for that whatsoever. So if you're providing false information on that score, that's a criminal offence. It's also an offence to pass on materially inaccurate information on market conditions. I mean, that can come up for a business in all sorts of circumstances. But if a consumer ends up, as a result, in a worse position they would have been if you'd actually just told the truth, then again that's actionable. You're not allowed under the rules either to claim that somebody's going to win a prize when in fact you don't actually give them a prize, or describing a product as free and then asking the consumer to pay for it. Right? If somebody's promoting something as being a free product, then that's what it's got to be. As soon as you're being asked to pay money for it, it's falling foul of these rules. Another common scam, and this is a scam, is where a trader will send you an invoice or similar document which gives the consumer the impression that they've ordered the product even though they can't remember ordering it. It's not a mistake, they're trying it on, and again that's a criminal offence. You're also not allowed to pass yourself off as a consumer. If you're acting in the course of your business, that has got to be clear. You're not allowed to give the impression that you're just an ordinary consumer when in fact you're acting for the purposes of your business. You also have to be upfront about where after-sales service can be procured. So if you are saying, oh yeah, you can get after-sales service right across Europe, and then the consumer, when they actually go to invoke that, suddenly finds that's not true, then that would be a criminal offence. Not surprisingly, it's also an offence for a trader to basically imply to a consumer that they can't leave the premises until they enter into a contract. I mean, that is coercion, harassment, undue influence. So you've got a consumer always has the right to choose whether or not to enter into a contract. It's actually an essential element also of contract law that it's got to be a choice that you make freely, and if you're not making that choice freely, then that's not only breaking contract law, but it's also a criminal offence. If somebody turns up at your doorstep and then refuses to leave until you buy something, that again is a criminal offence. The only variation on that is to the extent justified to enforce a contractual obligation. So if you owe someone money, then it might be okay for them to turn up and ask you when they're going to be paid, but so a salesperson can't just pitch up on your doorstep and then say, right, I'm not going until you buy something. Right? It's also an offence to make persistent and unwanted phone calls, fax, send emails or anything else like that when somebody hasn't actually asked for that. A lot of people get swamped by sales calls, and in that situation the company concerned is actually breaking the law. It's also an offence, and this is a good one to know about, that if you're looking to claim on your insurance policy and the insurance company is refusing to answer your calls or asking you to provide stuff that it's just not reasonable for you to actually have to supply in order for them to process the claim, and that's breaking the law, okay? Because effectively what they're trying to do is not allow you to enforce your contractual rights. It's also against the law for an advertisement to say to children, go and nag your parents to buy this amazing toy, sweet, whatever it is. So in that situation, that's a company trying to invoke what's called pester power. and that is actually a criminal offence. It's okay for traders or businesses to market to adults and say you might want to get this for your child, but you are not allowed in any advertisement to suggest to the kids that they go nag their parents to buy a particular product. Good one to know about in the run up to Christmas. It's also against the law to demand immediate or deferred payment for the return or safekeeping of products supplied by the trader, but not actually asked for by the customer. So that's where somebody sends you something, and then which you haven't actually asked for, and then they start and say, right, you owe me money for that, and you're like, well, no, I don't, because I didn't actually ask for it. Okay? So that's also a criminal offence. Finishing up, you're also not allowed to use emotional pressure when dealing with consumers, so you can't say, oh, well, unless you buy this, I'm going to lose my job, or unless you buy this product or this service, my business will go bust. Right, that's actually a criminal offence. Obviously, there are times and days where life gets in the way and a trader is injured or something like that, and then, you know, you've just got to be sensible about it, but that's where you're dealing with an actual situation. In this situation, somebody is trying to manipulate you emotionally to get you to actually do something. It's also against these rules to create the false impression that a consumer has already won something or will win something, and then when they go to claim their prize, there is either no prize or they ask you to pay money in order to process your successful claim, and then they pocket the money and then you never get your prize. So if you take part in games of chance and then the prize doesn't actually materialise, then that's a scam effectively, because you paid money usually for tickets or whatever, and then you've got nothing to show for it even though technically you've won. So any of these behaviours are automatically unfair, and there's no justification for them. There's nothing that any business can say in relation to these that will actually justify whatever they're doing. And the sanction for a trader who takes part in any of these 31 unfair commercial practices is £5,000 fine, up to 2 years imprisonment. It's worth noting that these rules apply to all companies, whether they're large or small. Okay, so banks also come under these rules, as do transport companies and large PLCs. So where can you go for help if you've been misled or treated unfairly by a Hampshire trader, or even aggressively? Right, the first place you should go to is your local trading standards officer, as they are actually under a duty to act under the regulations. Hampshire Trading Standards can be contacted at Montgomery House, Monarch Way, Winchester, SO22 5PW. The phone number is 01962 833 620, or you can email tsadvice@hants.gov.uk. Consumers in Hampshire can get further advice by contacting the Citizens Advice Consumer Service, which provides free, confidential and impartial advice on consumer issues, and their web address is www.adviceguide.org.uk. If you want to call them, the number is 03 454 0405 06. These EU rules are powerful and put consumers who are treated in an unfair, misleading or aggressive way in a very strong position, as very few traders are prepared to go to prison for 2 years for any of these commercial practices. It's just not worth it. So if you're being treated unfairly by a business or trader in Hampshire, then enforce your rights. They are the ones that are at fault, not you, and use these rules to ensure you get fair dealing. Thank you.